Some say greed is a slow poison, a creeping rot that devours a man from the inside out. But for Gavin Whitmore, it wasn't slow at all. It came swift and brutal, like a curse whispered into existence, the moment he betrayed his own flesh and blood. This is the story of a man who thought he could cheat fate, steal his father's legacy, and walk away unscathed. He was wrong. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Throughout his whole life, Gavin had held the belief that life owed him more. Harold Whitmore, his father, was a guy who had created a fortune through decades of hard labor. He was a man who was strict yet success-oriented. In addition to being the target of Gavin's fascination, their expansive family house was a stately Victorian mansion with ivy climbing up its stone walls. It was the crown gem of Harold's fortune. For a number of years, Gavin had been living in the shadow of that mansion, harboring resentment at his father for his obstinate unwillingness to give up the property. Harold's voice would be forceful as he would remark, "Gavin, it's not just a house, it would be a legacy." To add insult to injury, legacies are not sold for fast cash. Gavin, on the other hand, was not concerned about legacies. It was important to him to have a life that was free of financial concerns and to have costly watches and luxury automobiles. Therefore, Gavin saw his opportunity when Harold's health started to deteriorate, his once robust form becoming fragile and his bright intellect beginning to deteriorate. The choice was simple to make. There was no way that Harold could put up a fight. Through the use of a few falsified signatures and a bribe that was strategically placed, Gavin was able to arrange for his father to be disappeared. In the moment when the white vehicle came, Harold did not cry or ask for help. Gavin's skin crawled as he gazed at his kid with a gaze that was so heavy that it made him feel uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Dad," Gavin lied, attempting to inject a sense of regret into his tone of voice. "It's for your own good." The corners of Harold's mouth turned up into a stoic grin of understanding. "You will regret this." After that, he threw himself into the vehicle without uttering a single word. In the beginning, there was no change. After moving into the house, Gavin began holding extravagant parties, bringing acquaintances who were interested in gold mining, and spending money without restraint. Strange occurrences started to take place after that, however. In spite of the fact that it had always been warm and vibrant, the home became chilly. Even in the summer, drafts could be heard slithering along the corridors. It was his father's voice that Gavin heard mumbling in the nighttime, and it came from rooms that were vacant. "You will regret this." During the course of one morning, Gavin discovered the painting of Harold in the study. The eyes of the image had become hollow, and the paint had begun to peel off as if it had dried overnight. After then, the letters arrived. A fresh envelope, written in Harold's handwriting, was delivered to the mailbox each and every day. On the inside, the same phrases are usually used. "You are never my heir." They continued to come despite Gavin's efforts to destroy them. Gavin, in a state of desperation, rummaged through the old papers of his father. That was the moment when he discovered the truth. It was not his inheritance to inherit the home. A number of years earlier, Harold had given it to a charitable organization, but he had included a stipulation that said, "If my son ever tries to take it from me, the deed becomes void, and the house returns to the earth." It was first Gavin who laughed. A load of superstitious rubbish. On that particular evening, however, the walls started to break. Floors made a groaning sound. The big chandelier that was located in the entryway broke, causing glass to fall into the foyer like rain. Furthermore, Harold's voice reverberated once again from the depths of the darkness. "You are warned. Gavins Riches, his future, and his sanity were all taken with him," as the home crumbled into pieces at morning. A grin appeared on the face of Harold Whitmore, who was working at a peaceful nursing home. A real estate agent discovered the overgrown remnants of the mansion some months after it had been abandoned. A rumor circulated among the townspeople about the avaricious son, who had attempted to take his father's inheritance and had ultimately paid the price for it. And what about Gavin? His last known whereabouts was when he was observed walking the streets while mumbling to himself while still holding a solitary letter that was falling apart. You will regret this. He did that as well. As he made his way through the streets, Gavin's thoughts began to unravel like the last strands of a cursed tapestry. His once expensive clothing had become torn. Some of the citizens of the town avoided him out of compassion, while others did so out of fear. It seemed as if whispers followed him wherever he went. That's the man who betrayed his own father. The house swallowed him whole. The old man's curse got him in the end. On the other hand, Gavin hardly heard them. He was preoccupied with listening to the other voice, the one that never left him until it was no longer there, that of his father. A biting cold that gnawed at Gavin's bones arrived with the arrival of winter. In an effort to maintain his own sustenance, he had sold everything he had, including his watch, his jewelry, and even the coat he was wearing. However, the money seemed to slide through his fingers like sand, as if destiny itself was making fun of him because of it. Gavin passed out outside the iron gates of Blackwood Asylum one night, dazed from the effects of hungriness and the cold. At the moment of his awakening, he found himself in a sterile white room, confined to a bed. As he bent forward, a physician with empty eyes looked at him. Do you know why you're here, Mr. Whitmore? The words, the house is gone, were said in a whisper by Gavin, whose lips were fractured. Sighing, the physician said, Not at all, Gavin. Your home was never yours to lose in the first place. After then, the man's visage, for a little moment, took on the appearance of that of his father. Gavin let out a yell. Every day seemed to turn into a week. It was difficult for Gavin to distinguish between his dreams and his waking terrors. It seemed as if the walls of the institution were speaking to him, their voices seeming hauntingly familiar. You thought you could outsmart me. One could hear Harold's voice slithering through the crevices. Boy, a home is consisting of more than simply stone and wood. No, it's a recollection. It's true blood, despite Gavin's efforts to scratch his ears. The volume of the sound continued to increase. After that, on a certain evening, a person who worked in order handed him a yellow envelope. This was something that the guy mumbled. I discovered it in the old records. Thought you should see it. The only image that was included therein was of a younger version of Harold standing next to a lady whom Gavin did not recognize. The following is written in a fading pen on the back. This is for Eleanor. Who is the rightful heir? Gavin's breath caught in his chest. As for Eleanor, who the heck was she? It was the name that tormented him. In an effort to determine whether or not his father had ever spoken the name Eleanor, Gavin combed through his fragmented recollections. Not a thing. In the deteriorating library of the institution, he discovered a newspaper clipping dated many decades ago, which read as follows: Local businessman Harold Whitmore's daughter dies in tragic accident, despite the fact that the piece was short. The identity of the author was obvious: Eleanor Whitmore. He has a sister. The existence of a sibling that he was unaware of. It was a spinning room. Had he been kept in the dark about her by his father? Throughout the whole process. Had she been the legitimate heir? Over the course of that night, Gavin had a dream in which he saw a little girl dressed in a white dress standing among the ruins of the mansion. It was a corroded key that she held forth. As she muttered, "You were never supposed to have it," she said. But now it's too late. Gavin received a sealed mail from a nurse one week after the first incident. It could not have been anybody else's handwriting save his father's. He tore it open with hands that were shaking the whole time. It's Gavin. This means that you have gained knowledge of the truth if you are reading it. Eleanor was your identical twin. She was charitable. She was a selfless person. She was the complete opposite of what you were. When she passed away, I was unable to bring myself to talk about her. However, I made a solemn commitment that her legacy would endure in the home, which was intended to serve as a safe haven for people who were in need, rather than a trophy for a guy who was looking to amass wealth. I was under the impression that you were stealing from me. On the other hand, you are merely taking from her. Moreover, you have nothing at this point. Dear son, farewell. Harold is the name. Gavin's vision was a whirlwind. It appeared as if the walls of the institution were pulsating around him, and the air was heavy with the aroma of wet dirt and old wood, which was the fragrance of his biological father's home. After then, the sound of a child's laughing could be heard coming from the darkness. The next morning, Gavin's cell was devoid of any occupants. It was really well organized in the bed. The window was secured from the interior of the building. However, there was a solitary rose that had faded and was lying on the pillow. It was the same sort of rose that had been growing in the garden of the Whitmore house. There were 2 words written in a jumbled font on the wall that was located over the bed. We're home. Many years later, a real estate developer purchased the property that had previously been occupied by the Whitmore mansion. The construction workers refused to set foot on the land, despite the fact that he intended to construct premium condominiums. They said that they heard sounds, including a guy crying, a girl singing, and an elderly man's jovial laugh that was frigid and pleased. It was decided to discontinue the project. When you go by that overgrown plot at twilight, you could just get a glimpse of 3 shadowy figures standing in the ruins at that moment, keeping one's fingers crossed that the next hungry person will make the same error.